great product, have maybe one or two customers that have proven that the product is very viable, but it hasn't taken off yet because they don't have the marketing dollars. So we're typically investing the marketing dollars. And so what we've been able to do by building a group of, we now are upwards of 70 investors at the Angel Investor Forum, is we're investing in a lot of these innovation pipeline accelerator companies. It's a very nice combination.
Do you have formal meetings on this? Is there events that take place that kind of get this whole thing going?
We have a website, and that's called angelinvestorforum.com. And we also have the Innovation Pipeline Accelerator website, which is www.ctipa.org. It is a nonprofit organization. So it is intended to really capture all the great ideas, bring them to the point when they really can maybe use that additional capital and then fold that in as well. And that the Angel Investor Forum is not the only source of angel capital in the state, but it's an important one.
You know, I think it's important to say that there is a whole, you asked if there's a system here, and every week you review business plans, and every week a group get together and sort of say, these are the ones that are going to make the cut, and every month they get together and meet with the companies that have sort of made that month's finals, and they make a decision pretty much right there and then if they're going to make an investment. Some companies, they say, come back next month or come back in 6 months after you work on this. But it's a very immediate thing. You know, a lot of fundraising takes months and months, and getting a grant might take a year from the government. But this is something where you walk in the door. If Liddy and her group think this makes sense, 2 weeks later, they could be talking to you about making an investment.
It's like the American Idol of investments, right?
Not exactly. We like to think it's a little more rigorous than that. But it is an important point that Matthew makes, which is that it is a direct source of capital. It's not like applying to a bank or a government agency. Private individuals, they can make decisions quickly. The other key thing to think about in Connecticut, and I think it's one of our great strengths, is that unlike Silicon Valley, which is highly focused on technology, we are a state with tremendously diverse skills and tremendously diverse industries. So the Innovation Pipeline Accelerator has actually got 10 different sectors of companies represented among those 400 or 500 companies. Likewise, the Angel Investor Forum invests in a broad swath of companies. So you don't have to be a software company to apply. We have people who've come out of Stanley Works, for instance, retired executives from Pfizer, retired executives from People's Bank, people from many walks of life retire or decide they're going to shift their role and start investing in early stage companies, and they will naturally invest in the companies that they have expertise in.
So innovation's the key, not necessarily high technology.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be technology in order to apply for funding. It has to be innovation. It has to be fast growth. That's consistent.
And interestingly, that's one of Connecticut's great competitive areas. I know that's one of the focuses of your show. Connecticut has a great diversity, as Liddy said, of different kinds of industries. And in fact, we did a study with an international group called the Battelle Institute that comes in and analyzes economies. And what they said is what makes Connecticut truly special is the fact that you have a lot of interconnections between industries. So you'll have computers and electromechanical devices, and you'll come up with control systems for factories. Or you'll have photonics, and you'll have molecular engineering, and you'll have interesting ways to look at cells, tiny little things. Or you'll have nano operations in terms of coatings, and you'll also have metallurgy, and you'll have ways to create better rollers for the steel industry. What they said is, you know, Connecticut has always been a lot of job shops. You've always sort of had a big supply chain. So when they made helicopters or jet engines or helicopters, what people did was they would create little shops all around the factory, and they would put them together. And we still have that tradition. And that actually gives us a competitive advantage. So when European companies or Asian companies or even American companies want to solve a problem, Connecticut is still a great place to come up with a new technology and to solve a problem.
So from various perspectives, like Liddy was saying, it's not just high technology or software, it's everything from mechanical to software.
Well, I'll give you an example of a company also right here in this area that has used that network. It's a company that came up with a very innovative, it's called Sunport Industries. They came up with an innovative skylight that will be perfect to replace lighting in the average warehouse. So today we have this 40,000 square foot distribution center and you've got lights everywhere. Well, this skylight is very insulating, so you don't lose any heat going up it, but the light is amplified. Now, what makes that uniquely designed in Connecticut? They used people out of Sikorsky to figure out how to get the sidewalls of that skylight reflective enough so that the light was not lost in the interior. They used people out of an optical company, I've forgotten the name, to manufacture a very intense prism so that it could really amplify the light. And then they have a job shop out of Chester, Connecticut, Chapco, and they are manufacturing the facility because they have all the presses and things to do it. It's unique. It's very hard to find those skill sets in an area that's all a drive away.
Yeah, you mentioned that prism technology. I believe that's right here in the Farmington area.
It was. I just can't remember the name of the company, but it's that kind of connection that is possible here in Connecticut.
So one of the things that we also promote from a policy side, because the Tech Council wears a lot of different hats, and one of them is to have a policy view about how to create an innovative or entrepreneurial society. Another is to get people together so they know each other. One of the great advantages that we have is by having a lot of events. We give people awards. We have a lot of lunches, a lot of dinners. We get to know people. So they'll say, gee, I know I have a friend who does something like what you do, but a little different. We wouldn't know that if they were in Torrington and we're down having an event in New London. I mean, how do you actually get people together? We think of ourselves as a small state, but we're really disconnected in a lot of ways, and we travel in different circles. So part of what we need to do is create a network. All of the evidence says that one of the reasons that San Francisco and Boston and now places like Singapore and Austin do so well is because people talk to each other a lot. So we really promote that. What I was going to say, the other sort of interesting thing is to make sure that there is a way to sort of exchange ideas. And so a lot of the website that we're working on, a lot of the Web 2.0 communities that we're doing is to create a sense of smaller community out of our state where everybody sort of knows everybody. That's really one of our roles as an organization, is to create that density of network, that density of community.
So with what you're saying is you're really tying everything together where you can come up with that skylight, because without that type of communication, that kind of synergy or communication or collaboration couldn't happen.
Right. So part of it is collecting the information, because someone may evolve. Someone may have made ball bearings 20 years ago, and now they're making new kinds of coatings that might go into the ways that sort of computer parts sort of talk to each other because of something that they had to do to create a rounder ball bearing. And so now they have a totally different technology that you can use in making chips, or you can do something else. And so you never know where these things come from. One of the great examples of that is the Rogers Corporation, which is here in the state. And they started making metal wallpaper because richer people in the country wanted to go from paper to having sort of slightly sort of higher quality and metallic wallpaper. They now make a luminescent strip that's in cell phones. So when you open the cell phone and it glows a little bit, they actually make that whole process. So here they've gone from making wallpaper 150 years ago to making luminescent strips for cell phones. I mean, and you can see the connection if you sort of look at the history of the company, but you'd never sort of make that connection just if you came in without knowing the history. So one of it is to make sure that all of that information stays current and that people are able to access it. And so we actually have a wonderful project with the state where they give us money to sort of help create a database on all of these solutions and problems so that people can talk to each other about that.
And that is a public access database. We really encourage people to come to us with questions, come to us with needs for support of any kind. We have lots and lots of information available for companies. We'll do research projects. We're tied into several universities who do marketing programs for companies, do marketing analysis, competitive intelligence analysis. So we have an ongoing program of making introductions to companies, giving them services, tying them into mentors, tying them into service providers, tying them into capital access programs and research programs. So it's really a tremendous resource, and I think it's beginning to really bear fruit. One of our fast-track companies, which are the companies we select every year as the most likely to grow quickly, it was a company called Design to Launch, came into our program last year as one of the most likely to succeed, was bought by Kodak only 2 weeks ago. And so, that's an example of the kind of thing that, it's not our doing, but in part we take pride in that in any case.
So if someone has an idea, the many people that do have cutting-edge ideas, concepts in Connecticut, with your organization, and particularly the Innovative Pipeline and some of the others, they're not left alone. They can collaborate with others
That's
and have
right.
a network to do
and
that.
I wanted to emphasize also that it's all free of charge. So it's a tremendous opportunity for companies to get access to very, very cost-effective support.
But I think it's also important to say that we work very closely with government agencies. Connecticut has a wonderful agency called Connecticut Innovations, which is one of the first operations in the country where public money actually was packaged so that it could be invested in private companies. And we send a lot of our companies to them, and we have other programs throughout the government. And it just turns out that you have to have a good balance of private money, and the angels are private money, leveraging with government support. Because right now, again, the battle is to get entrepreneurs and investors to pick a location in the country or in the world. You know, we talk about the flat world. This was the big sort of revelation of the last couple of years, that any place can compete. But that doesn't mean that every place can compete. And there's a fellow up in Toronto named Richard Florida who does studies about what makes a place competitive. And he still points to a lot of evidence that having high quality of life, having cities that sort of work very well for young people, having the kind of universities that are sort of open to new ideas, all of these really create a better environment. So one of the roles that we have is to try to pick these ideas from around the world and make sure that Connecticut has an example of the best ways to attract entrepreneurs. And,
yeah, I think that's obviously the right way to go. And one thing I know from my perspective is, dealing with both of you from almost a year now, that I was actually blown away, if you will, by the types of companies that are in your pipeline or part of your organization that you would never think would be, I'm biased myself, that you think of older companies, maybe insurance or financial organizations, but some of the organizations that I've been in touch with through your help and your help, Matthew, that are just totally amazing, like companies that are putting interactive media on your cell phone, to other companies that are helping with blood transfusions, to even something maybe more low technology, but it's quite fascinating.
I was so thrilled this week. I found that that in Connecticut we have the #1 application for sports on MySpace. So who knew? You would think these guys would be out of Palo Alto, out of Stanford, but in fact they're right here in Hartford. So we are really creating the image of a very high-tech, very diverse economy with lots of innovation every day.
I think that both of you must find quite interesting, is being at the forefront of this. People's attitudes that you come in contact with day in, day out is maybe diametrically opposed to some degree of what's really going on in Connecticut.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, I spoke at the Connecticut Innovations dinner last week, a few weeks ago, and one of the things we talked about was just, this didn't happen overnight. A lot of us have been working, and a lot of government agencies have been working for 20 and 30 years to sort of create this kind of environment. But it is very exciting. And I also want to congratulate Yale and UConn and Wesleyan and a lot of the universities, because they're doing is they're making it more likely that students will become entrepreneurs, and there are entrepreneurial programs starting up all over the state with students. And that, again, attracts people. People will select a university if they know they can be part of an entrepreneurial environment or center. So
certainly Connecticut Technology Council is a leading example of an organization that's getting it down right and helping Connecticut stay at the forefront of economic development. I'd like to thank you both, Liddy Carter from the Innovation Pipeline and Matthew Nimison, the president of the Connecticut Technology Council. And thank all of you for listening and watching to another edition of the Business Buzz. We'll be back next week with other exciting guests looking at the state of the economy, where it is and where it's